leadership lecture series. Today is 20th November and this is the second episode. Last time, first episode, we talked about my background. I'm a chemical engineer. I worked in several places in my life, about 30 years, such as ABU, Federal Superphosphate Fertilizer Company, Ajakuta Steel Company, National Iron Ore Mining Company, Gidauniyar Jihar Katsina, and National Steel Material Exploration Agency. Based on my background and my experience, I would like us to talk about some of the problems I saw when I was working, and most of them center around leadership. Today I want to talk about my ABU years. I started work in ABU, as I said last week, in August 1974. Shortly after that, I got invited to Federal Superphosphate Fertilizer Company, where I started in October 1974. So I worked for only about 3-4 months in ABU, but I have observed some problems there. My own personal problems, which contributed to my leaving, were house. I had no house. I was living in the hostel, Ixa Hall, with the students. But that was not very important. What was more important was a colleague of mine told me that it was difficult to get funds for research, but that again, I think, was not the most important. Most important reason why I left was because I realized that for me to be a good teacher, I have to have experience in the industry as a chemical engineer. As they said, those who know, they do. Those who don't, they teach. So I wanted to be among those who know, so that when I teach, I will teach from experience. In any case, when I wrote my resignation letter, surprisingly, the then VC, Professor Ishaya Audu, wrote me a personal letter urging me not to resign, that the university was built for us young northerners, and therefore we should stay and work there and build it up. A very touching letter. I wish I had kept that letter. Out of my youthful exuberance, I didn't keep the letter. But one thing about people like Ishaya Audu, these are people who really believe in leading properly. I was told of an incident where he tried to go to the ABU, the hospital in Tunawada area. But the car that he tried to enter the hospital did not have the H sign, which was needed for you to be allowed. So the guard told him that he can't enter. He said, why? He said, because you don't have the H sign. He said, don't you know who I am? He said, no, I know. Who am I? He said, you are the Vice Chancellor, Professor Ishaya Audu. So he reversed and went back and came back with his wife's card. His wife was a nurse, so she had. So when he came back, the guard said, yes, now you can enter. So he was very impressed. And the following day, he asked for the file of the guard. And he immediately ordered that he should be promoted to the next level. Now, this to me is very good leadership trait. If it were now, he would have been sacked, because now we don't have leaders like him. So one of the leadership traits I didn't mention last week was the leadership by example. Again, we don't have so many leaders like that. Anyway, sorry. I believe that we have so many universities and polytechnics and colleges of education that with the better leadership, we can reverse this education tourism that we are now seeing, that people go to all kinds of countries where their facilities are not even as good as our universities. But I know that apart from the usual problems we have of lack of power and water and so on, for the universities, I think the biggest problem is lack of funds and ASU strikes. Nobody will want to come to Nigeria University the way we are, unless such strikes that sometimes consume up to 1 year. Nobody will want to come to Nigeria University. So unless we solve those problems, one way of solving the problem of lack of funds is if we adopt the American system. In the US, most universities, 90% of their lecturers are on contract, renewable every year. And for your contract to be renewed, there are 4 criteria they use. One is you have to attract research grant in the area you are lecturing. Once you get that grant, they will divide it into 2. Half of it will go to the university. The other half, they will divide it further into 2. And they give one half of that to the department, and the other half you now can conduct your research. The second criteria is that you have to write papers, which you have to publish papers based on your research at least 3 times a year in recognized journals. The third criteria is that once in 3 years you should write a textbook on your subject. You can do it you can do it in collaboration with other writers, maybe two or three others. The fourth one, which I think is very important in Nigeria, is your students have to assess you. If your students say they don't want you, you have to go, because 40% of the money, the funds they use in running the universities is from student fees. Now, if we are to adopt this kind of system, like student assessment, this issue of selling handouts will be out, or harassing female students for sex by lecturers will be out, because you know that the students can vote you out and you will go. Also, another source of funds is the alumni association. In the US, many alumni associations are able to generate a lot of money, and if we have something like that in Nigeria, I think we'll be able to generate funds from former students. Some of them become very successful and they turn around and help their universities. As for ASU strike, I think the reason why we have a problem with ASU is that all those who are involved in negotiating with ASU, most of them are not stakeholders. Many of them, they have students either in foreign universities or in private universities in Nigeria. So such people, since they don't have stake, they don't take the negotiation seriously. In fact, one very unfortunate thing which I noticed is that while there was strike in Nigeria, ASU strike, for over 8 months, our own Minister of Education was shown attending the graduation of his child in England. How can you be a Minister of Education and your children are studying not only outside Nigeria, outside public schools, but in foreign countries? So as far as I can see it, if we can make that before you are even made a minister, the moment you send your son abroad to study, you should step down, because it means you have no faith in your own educational system. So I think if the same thing with the people, the Ministry of Education, even in National Assembly, the committees, education committees, you find some of their members have children abroad studying. So as long as you have that kind of situation, it means nobody will take the problem seriously. They have no stake, and unless they have stake, they will not take it serious. So this boils down to issue of leadership. Why anybody who is holding public office does not have does not lead by example. I remember in those days of NEPA, if you are a top staff of NEPA, you could not own a generator. But I believe now that that system has been forgotten, and we have to revive that kind of system. I talked about leadership. How do we get good leadership in Nigeria? I said that the best way is to embrace the grassroots politics, because our politicians, they decide who will be president, they decide who will be governor or senator without any control. If you want a job in any place, you have to be tested and examined and interviewed. But as for president, nobody tests you, nobody examines you, nobody determines whether you are. It's just those people who have money. So unless we run away from money politics, we'll continue to have bad leaders. And I think the way to go is this: let's start grassroots from the ward level. We select the person who will best represent that ward, and then from the local government, from the state, and so on. So I think we should encourage that kind of grassroots leadership. I think, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed my lecture, and I hope you listen and pass it on to your friends so that we can inculcate this, especially this type of leadership that we're talking about. The more people get to know about it, the more it will become popular and the more it will be embraced. Thank you. How many minutes?